These days, there are many Canadians out there who are going through difficult times because of COVID-19. The pandemic represents an unprecedented challenge for our country, and Canadians are suffering the consequences. But some individuals and some sectors are more hard hit than others. Therefore, this week, we announced additional measures to assist those who need it most. Now, first of all, we're reaching an agreement with all of the provinces and territories to top up the wages of essential workers. Those individuals are on the front line of the fight against COVID-19 and have been from the outset, and they're doing an amazing job. The best way of thanking them is to ensure that they are properly paid and protected. And this week, thanks to that agreement, we are now moving forward to a new step by putting more money in their pockets. We also announced more support to help the food supply sector get through this crisis. We are giving more money to food processors to ensure the safety of their workers. We are also laying out special measures for pork and cattle producers so that they can adapt to market changes. And we are setting up a program that will allow the government to buy additional products that could be wasted in order to redistribute them to charities. And all in all, our government has proposed a loan capacity of $5 million and additional money to support food safety from the outset of this crisis. And as I said earlier this week, if we have to do more, we will do more.
For the past few weeks, our government has been focused on getting people the help they need as quickly as possible. But to come out of this stronger than ever, we also have to think long-term. We need to lay the groundwork now so our economy can come roaring back. And that's what we're doing with measures like the Canada Emergency Business Account and the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. So far, more than 500,000 small businesses have received a loan through the CEBA. And less than 2 weeks since launching the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, employers have applied for subsidies for almost 2 million workers. Our government is giving employers more resources so they can stay in business and keep people on the payroll during this crisis. Maintaining the connection between employer and employee will be key, not just to help people get back on their feet, but also to our economy. In that vein, we announced yesterday that we would be extending the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy beyond June. At the same time, we're working with our partners from around the world to beat COVID-19 for good. This pandemic is a global issue. Keeping Canadians safe and restarting our economy means defeating the virus not just at home, but wherever it is found. So earlier this week, we announced new investments to accelerate the global development of COVID-19 vaccines, treatments, testing, and research, including research being done here in Canada.
In recent weeks, we established new assistance programs for workers and businesses, but we know that the work is not over yet. As the situation evolves, the needs and the challenges also evolve, and we are adjusting our response consequently. We continue to be listening to Canadians, and we are always seeking other ways of supporting them.
I want to close by asking all the moms to step out of the room for a minute so I can talk to your kids. I'll give you a second. Okay. Tomorrow is Mother's Day, kids. It's a special day for all the people who are mothers to us, our moms, stepmoms, grandmothers, aunts, and older sisters. So let's show them how much we love and care about them. You might want to get up early to make her breakfast or ask Dad to help you get her some flowers. Or if you're not together this year because of the virus or other reasons, you can draw her a card or set up a video call. Whatever you do, I'm sure what you'll choose to do will make her day and express how much you love her, how much you need her, and how much she has your full support and full love during this difficult time, but all the time as well. Demain, c'est la fête des mères.
Tomorrow is Mother's Day. It is an opportunity to show our mums just how much we love them. Maybe you'll get up earlier to make her breakfast in the morning, or perhaps you prefer to buy her flowers or prepare a card for her. Whatever you decide to do, I'm sure that you will really make her day by telling her how much you love her, that you'll be there for her, and that we will all be there for each other during this difficult time. Have fun and take advantage of this day. We will come through this together.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now go to the phones for questions. One question, one follow-up. Operator.
Thank you. Merci. First question, Rod Nickel from Reuters. Line open.
Prime Minister, as you know, the U.S. Department of Justice is looking into whether meat packers have unfairly profited from low livestock prices and high meat prices during the pandemic. And given that the same big meat companies operate in Canada, do you share that concern?
We have significant concerns about the entire scope of our agricultural supply chain. We need to make sure that workers are safe. We need to make sure that Canadians from coast to coast are getting a reliable and safe supply of the food they need to feed their families and put on the table. And we also need to make sure that no one is profiting in an exaggerated way from this crisis. We will take a very careful look to ensure that people are there for each other and supporting each other, and no one is focusing on profits before supporting Canadians.
Well, Prime Minister, what will that careful look involve? Like, would you like to see the Competition Bureau in Canada look into this?
We have many mechanisms at the federal level to keep an eye on supply chains and prices, and we will engage with those processes as we have since the very beginning of this crisis. Okay. We
know that it's very important to ensure that our food supply chain is secure and to make sure there's food for all Canadians. That means ensuring the safety of the workers who are on the production lines, but also ensuring that those supply chains continue to operate clearly and robustly for Canadians during this crisis. At the same time, we need to ensure that no one is placing profit before the health and safety of Canadians in the current situation. And we have tools available at different levels of government, and we will use them if necessary.
Thank you. Merci. The next question, Teresa Wright, the Canadian Press. Line open.
Good morning, Prime Minister. We know from the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls that Indigenous women were already more likely to experience violence, and now COVID-19 has exposed them to concerningly high levels of domestic violence due to the pandemic restrictions. Given this, can we expect to see the National Action Plan on the inquiry's findings in June as promised, or will COVID-19 delay this?
No, the work that we're doing on establishing a national action plan on violence against women coming out of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls inquiry is more important than it has ever been. We have seen in situations where someone is forced to stay home when home isn't safe, a rise in domestic violence because of the stresses, because of the confinements, because of the challenges we're facing because of COVID-19. And this government has worked from the beginning to give more support to shelters and organizations and networks that are supporting victims of family violence or gender-based violence. We will continue to do that work. We will continue to work very hard on that national action plan coming from the Missing and Murdered inquiry. This is a priority that continues and is even intensified because of this crisis. Okay. Les situations de violence domestique, de violence.
Domestic violence and gender-based violence are unfortunately more prevalent during this crisis because of the stress and the confinement and the vulnerabilities of certain segments of the population. And that's why we are continuing our important work to counter domestic violence and gender-based violence. We continue continue to work on the government's response to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls inquiry, and we will continue to bolster those efforts during this crisis. We don't want to go backwards. On the contrary, we want to move forward on this.
Yes, thank you. There are many people who are still not being helped by your emergency financial assistance programs. People who were unemployed before the crisis began, people on disability or social assistance, they're all left out. Will help be coming for them?
We know that it's been important to get help out to millions of Canadians very quickly, and that's what we've done. We've seen over 7 million people access the CERB, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, but we've always recognized there is more to do. We made modifications that ensure that people who are recently unemployed, whose unemployment benefits ran out before COVID-19 started, would also qualify for the CERB. We've put in place measures to support students. We've looked for other ways to fill gaps, and we will continue to. At the same time, we have given more money to community organizations and networks that are supporting our most vulnerable in cases where the direct support we're offering can't reach people. We will continue to work to make sure that all Canadians, but particularly vulnerable Canadians, are supported through this crisis.
Hi, Prime Minister. Chris Logue with Global News. With all of the aid money rolling out the door, are you simultaneously planning for how to help the economy back now or waiting until some of the pandemic is behind us?
I think we obviously need to be thinking about the longer term while we design and while we bring in place support for people. That's why, for example, we move forward with the wage subsidy, which, unlike the CERB, is there for people who, lose their job and lose their paycheck and therefore have a broken connection with their previous job. The wage subsidy allows people to stay connected with their employment, so that once we start being able to reopen certain sectors and once the economy picks up again, people will still have that link by getting a paycheck from that employer that will allow them to get back positively and quickly. There are a broad range of ways in which the measures we've put forward are very much thinking about the recovery. That goes part and parcel. But our focus right now is supporting Canadians so that they can do what needs to be done to slow and stop the spread of this pandemic as we start looking at reopening.
Sorry, but I'm not questioning the help. I'm asking if recovery plans are happening simultaneously.
We are, of course, looking towards the steps that will be required on the recovery of the economy. That is a significant amount of work that is ongoing, but our focus right now is on recognizing that we are not in the recovery phase yet. We are not even fully into the restarting phase yet. We are still in the emergency phase where people need to get the support they need so they can continue to socially distance, to stay at home, even as certain regions and certain places are talking about reopening. The vast majority of Canadians will need to continue to be very careful, and that's why they will continue to need support. We know that in some places they are starting to restart their society and economy, but we are still in a position where people must continue to protect themselves, must stay home, and continue to practice social distancing. As we slowly and gradually reopen the economy, we know that many people will have to continue to stay home, and that's why our emphasis right now continues to be on supporting families and workers so that they can do what we all need to do to stop the spread of COVID-19.
Prime Minister Ashley Burke, CBC News. The government has suspended the shipment of 8 million N95 masks made in China that failed to meet specifications. How big a loss is that for Canada? And given that this was a Montreal company that had outsourced to China, does this not prove that we should not be relying on foreign outsourcing for such critical equipment?
We have been working very, very hard since the very beginning to bring in as much PPE as we possibly can. We've talked about about 23 different flights just from China China of millions of items of PPE because we know the need is and has been so pressing. At the same time, we have ensured that we are ramping up domestic capacity to be able to ensure that we're covering the needs that we have for the longer term. And I want to thank all the companies and manufacturers who've stepped up. At the same time, we also know that in the millions of items that we've received, we have to ensure that they are at the top quality expected by our Canadian healthcare workers. And the withholding or the suspending of shipments from this particular supplier is proof that our system works. We are testing all those masks, all those items before they reach our healthcare workers because we will not compromise on the safety and protection for our healthcare workers. From
the very beginning, we have made every possible effort to have as much personal protective equipment as possible. And that means that we brought in 23 different flights from China. There are more flights coming in just about every day so that we have enough equipment for our frontline workers. We also know that we needed to develop our own domestic and capacity here. And that's why many Canadian companies are now producing that equipment, and we hope to be able to rely on them in the months to come, and at that point rely less on imports. But at the same time, we know that there is always a risk that the products that we import do not meet Canadian specifications for our frontline workers. And that's why we have introduced a rigorous verification system so that no item that does not meet our specifications here in Canada will be distributed. And the example of that Montreal company is the proof that the system is working because none of those masks found their way into our healthcare system because we do the necessary checks.
Prime Minister, a few weeks ago, one of your deputy ministers said that Canada was spending between $1.20 and $6 per N95 mask. How much should we pay for these ones?
Right now, we're in discussions with the supplier because we will not be burdened with masks that do not fit our stringent requirements. There are discussions ongoing with them about whether there are alternative uses for these masks, but we will not be paying for masks that do not hit the standards that we expect to give to our frontline workers. Okay.
We are currently looking at this with the supplier to see if there's any alternate use we could make of those masks. Perhaps we could send them to other places other than to our healthcare system. But I can tell you that we will not pay the full price for masks that we will not be able to use within the healthcare system.
Capital Commission reversed a rule overnight that said people weren't allowed to take pictures in the parks of the tulips, and they installed signs to say no pictures please. They're now taking those down. That follows Ottawa's reversal of a rule that you can't talk to your neighbors over fences and you can't visit your loved ones at the windows of nursing homes. Are we getting a bit overzealous with the COVID-19 rules?
I think different orders of government and organizations are trying as best they can to put in rules that will balance the need to keep people safe and slow and stop the spread of COVID-19, while at the same time giving people the much needed respite and safety valves from the stresses and indeed the mental health challenges many people are facing. We need to try and get people through this healthy, which means both fighting COVID-19 and supporting them and allowing for as normal lives as we can despite the deep abnormality of this situation. It's an unprecedented situation. Lots of people are trying different things to keep people safe. We're going to keep adjusting, all of us, when we get things right, when we get things wrong. I think that's what people expect.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau, Christian Noël.
Good morning, Mr. Trudeau, Radio-Canada. Some people may be taking things too seriously and some not seriously enough. Montreal is the hardest hit, and public health officials are saying that if there's any relaxation of the rules, there will be even more people falling ill. Now, I know that you don't want to enter into a war with the provinces, but you have constituents in Montreal. So are you concerned? And do you think the Quebec government is doing what it should? Well, I am a Quebecer, and I'm a member of Parliament in Montreal, and I'm very concerned about the citizens of Montreal, just as I'm concerned about people right across this country. We have to base ourselves on science. We have to ensure that what we're doing considers the protection of all citizens and, as a priority, our seniors. So yes, I know we have to talk about gradually and progressively reopening the economy, but that has to be done in such a way as to keep people safe. That's the priority. And I'm monitoring what's happening in the seniors' homes very carefully, particularly in my own riding. And I'm working very closely with other governments, including François Legault's government, to ensure that we are taking the right decisions to keep people safe.
Of course I'm worried, as a Quebecer, as a Montreal MP, about the situation going on in my riding in the province, as I am concerned about Canadians from coast to coast to coast as Prime Minister. We need to make sure that we go progressively and slowly and gradually on any reopening, keeping at top of mind the importance of keeping people safe and healthy. I understand the economic pressures we're all under, and I understand how much people do want to go outside. But we need to do it in ways that we are sure are going to keep people safe. Because the last thing people want is a few weeks from now being told, okay, we loosened the rules and now COVID's spreading again and you're all going to have to go inside for the rest of the summer. People don't want to do that. That's why being very careful, step by step, is going to be so important.
Sur un sujet un peu différent, sur
On a different topic, with respect to the labeling of essential products. Some products are coming in with not both official languages on them. Did you find a solution to ensure that all those products coming into the country are labeled in both official languages? Well, first of all, we know that labeling in both official languages is not just a matter of respecting Canada's linguistic duality. It's also a question of safety for the users, for consumers, and for customers. We have to make sure that people have access to those products and know how to use them properly. And that's why it was a concern for all of us when Health Canada, and I know that this was shared by Santé Québec, that took similar measures to allow for the labeling to appear only in English. But there's been a search for other solutions, because we want to make sure that the information is available online at the very least in both official languages and also in other languages if necessary for users.
We all recognize that bilingual labeling is not just a question of recognizing the important bilingualism of our country, but it's a question of safety as well. It's a question of actually ensuring that people know how to safely use a product that they are using or they are purchasing. That's why I know that Health Canada and indeed Health Quebec that approved unilingual English labeling in certain limited cases, didn't particularly want to and looked hard to try and find solutions. And I know on the Health Canada side, we've moved forward with online information that people can access in multiple languages to make sure that they are going to be able to fully understand what it is that the products they're using.
Ian Wood, CTV News. Prime Minister, you previously said that the economy and businesses should only reopen if they have adequate PPE to protect workers. Given the procurement issues, are you going to make any suggestions to the provinces that maybe they scale back on their reopening plans? And how long is the government going to be able to maintain these emergency subsidies?
First of all, we agreed as all First Ministers, premiers of provinces and territories, and the federal government, that there are principles that need to underlie any restarting of the economy. And that's exactly what we're moving forward on carefully. That's why we're continuing to procure massive amounts of PPE, including flights almost daily for the rest of the month from China and elsewhere, to ensure that we have enough equipment, even as the Canadian producers and manufacturers of these equipments are starting to come online and deliver their products as well. We know that as we move forward to reopening, we need to make sure that workplaces are safe for Canadians, and that we are arresting the spread of COVID-19 and preventing a second wave that could send us all back into confinement this summer, which we certainly do not want to be doing. So we're going to continue to work with the provinces to make sure that they are able to fulfill the levels that they are projecting they will need in terms of PPE, and that is something we're going to continue. As for how long these supports are going to last, we're going to keep adjusting to what the economy needs are, but mostly what the needs of Canadians are, to be supported and to stay safe through this situation. Okay. We
have been working with the provinces and territories to establish the principles that will guide the reopening of the economy in a gradual manner and based on good vigilance. And at the same time, we need to have enough protective equipment to be able to protect workers and prevent the virus from spreading more. So we will continue to work on this and to bring in PPE. We will also be working with the provinces to respond to their needs by creating domestic production here in Canada. But we will be working with the provinces to ensure they have all the necessary equipment to be able to reopen their economies in a safe and secure manner. Now, with respect to the benefits for Canadians, we will look at the situation, continue to monitor things, and we will be there to support people and provide assistance to the country so that we can all stay safe. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, that is the